Okay, welcome everybody to an aligned webinar. Super excited to be here with you all today as we're streaming here. So what are we going to be talking about today? What are we going to be doing? If you sign up for this event, this is 3 ways that you can thrive in a downturn economy, right? We're going to talk about it. So as you're live, as y'all are tuning in, we're going to be diving into all different types of things, what to cover, how to go about it, and make sure that, y'all can do everything that you need to do across the board. So as we have people tuning in and coming into the event, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know where you're at. We always love to hear that across the board. Let us know, and we'll dive right into it. So how's everybody's day going though? Before everyone turns in here. Doing good. Sarah, doing good. Vin?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, so as everybody's tuning in and everybody's coming about, we're going to dive into it. But again, main thing today is we're going to talk about 3 ways that we're going to be activating in the downturn economy, what we should be doing and how can we be active across the board. We have some people coming in, so we'll shout it out. Shout out to India. What time is it in India right now? Like shout out to India coming through. We got Austin, Texas coming through. We got Orange County in the house. We have San Francisco in the house, San Diego in the house. Let's keep it coming. We got Austin in here. Let's see. Tampa Bay. Okay, let's keep it rolling. We have Mexico in the house. We're worldwide. We got a lot of people coming through. Let's keep it coming, y'all. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We got Israel. Shout out to Eli, what's going on? We got Chicago in the house. Just came back from there. So it's actually nice, not as cold. Montreal, Madison, LA, all the people here. So thanks everyone for showing up and tuning in. Here we go.
Wow.
We got Canada in the house. We got Austria in the house. We got India in the house. We got all sorts of things. So
you got to shout out Jersey. Sam.
Wait, Jersey. Oh, there we go.
Jersey in the house. There you go.
There we go. Grand Rapids. We're everywhere right now. So, all right, y'all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just go over who is here, right? What is going on, and then we're gonna dive into it. And before we do that, I'm gonna ask you all here in the audience today, because we just want to get a quick pulse test on this as well. What is the number one thing that you're struggling with right now in your sales role or as a sales leader? Put that in the chat. We want to be able to help answer those questions as well. But let's dive into what we're actually doing today. Let's talk about who's actually here with you, and then we're going to dive into the content, because that's why y'all are here. So I'm going to share my screen, and y'all see it coming up here in a minute. And before we go into the content, again, we're going to see who's actually here. So we're going to start off with Vin. A quick intro on yourself and what your experience is coming from. We'll go to Sarah, we'll go to Olivier, and then we'll dive into the content.
Let's do it. Vin Matano. I'm an A here at Demandbase. Been at Demandbase for almost 5 years. Started off on the SDR team, was there for about 20 months, and then been in this closing role now this will be my 4th year as a closer. So a lot of experience with, I would say, email prospecting would be my topic of interest. But I'll kick it over to Sarah.
You and I have the same story. I've also been at Gong, just different company. I've been at Gong for about 5 years. I started out as an SDR. Now I'm in mid-market account executive. And I like to prospect all over the place. Mostly I prefer cold calls and social if I'm thinking about prospecting. And then, I don't know what else to say about me. I hang out. I like Aligned. I drink coffee. I'm chilling. It's a great place. I'm at my mom's house in South Carolina. It's really nice here. I'm in Beaufort. So if you're in Beaufort too, we can go get coffee or something else. So come hang out. You might even hear a dog in the background.
There we go. And last but not least on this intro.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivier. Actually been at Deel for 2 years now and 2 months. But I've been about 20 plus years selling technology across the globe in different companies such as Deel, obviously, such as Salesforce, where I spent the last, I would say, half of my career, growing from different roles up to being a country leader and AVP. But then prior to that, as work as well, I would say more traditional non-cloud software as well. So I've seen that transition, from selling, I would say, license and demands, and then going through cloud to cloud, and then all now with the revolution of B2B SaaS. So I was very lucky to see all of this and see as well many downturn economy from 2008. I was there and I saw the opportunity and I saw the struggle. Benny saw war times, and then we saw as well the COVID. So happy to share all of those insights, together with you today.
It's amazing. So as you'll see here, we have an incredible panel to answer your questions. I'll be guiding through the questions I'm going to ask them to answer your questions. And thanks for everyone adding in what their number one challenge is. If you have questions throughout this webinar, we're about to talk about there here in a minute in the rules. But before we go into the rules, shout out to Aligned for providing this webinar for us so that you can get this information. We're going to talk about a little bit more about like what that looks like and what they're doing. It's pretty incredible with sales rooms, making sure that you have the right mutual action plans, making sure that you're closing more deals. And we're going to talk about that today. But here are the rules. So you're going to get the replay. Everybody always asks like, hey, where's the replay? The replay will actually be provided on the Aligned page through the LinkedIn event. And then we also will be showing you a cool way that we're going to do some highlights after. So stay tuned for that. Put all of your questions in the chat as you have them. I'm going to go and make sure we get as much questions as possible. As you all see, the chat is moving quick. But we're going to try to answer as much as possible. Don't hesitate to ask your question. We're going to aim to get it. No selling solicitations of any kind during this. And also be kind. We don't want anything hostile here. We just want to be able to go with the flow. So what are you going to be learning today? So prepping for discovery to rise above the crop, questions that typically uncover pain, using the clues you found to drive pipeline velocity, leverage relationships in your deal. We talked about transparency in here already, and then also new channels to leverage in the sales cycle. So these are things that we're going to be focusing on today. And as you have questions, feel free to go in the chat and we're going to be able to do that. So we're going to hop right into the topic. And I want to start with Vin here. Vin, you've been sharing on a weekly basis your path to Presence Club, which I think is awesome. It goes into just transparency and content, but also that journey has been exciting to follow. And I bet there's a lot of people in here that are account executives that want to get to that next level in their discovery and also next level to Presence Club as well as they're facing certain challenges. So as we're talking about prepping for discovery to rise above the crop, what are some things that you do to make sure that you have an impactful call and leave a great impression on your prospects?
Yes, I think one of the things that's like overlooked is like having some showmanship for a call. And what do I mean by that is like if you're talking to a prospect, they're potentially checking out competitors and they're looking at a lot of different sales calls. It probably all sounds the same. So one thing I try to do at the beginning of all my sales calls is try to create some like showmanship, some entertainment, if you will, right? And so that could be as simple as taking a quote from one of your prospects from a previous call, putting that on the screen with like a picture of their face on the screen. That's one way to stand out. Another way you can stand out is by identifying areas. So for example, I had a call where one of my prospects, he was really into like hiking and things like that. And so instead of pitching just the demand-based normally, I kind of talked about how when you're hiking, you need certain tools to do that hike. And that was kind of the story that flew throughout the presentation. So creating ways like that where you can get the team on board. If you're sharing some data, sometimes at Demandbase, we share data with our clients instead of just like go ahead and like pulling up a slide with a bunch of numbers on it. Just put one number on the screen with no context. And I can then survey the room of being like, hey, whoever gets this right of what this number actually means, like, I'll send you guys a bottle of wine or whatever. It gets everybody engaged. And those are some ways that you can create some showmanship and like stand out in the, in that early process of a sales cycle.
Can we, I want to dive more into this and then we'll transition to the next person here. You talked about data. What are some things that you're doing to prepare the right data? Is this just been A/B testing over time? And you're like, okay, this is always a good reaction when I talk to this persona. How are you doing that accordingly when it comes to data?
That definitely depend on like what you actually sell. At Demandbase, one of our things is like intent data. So one of the cool things that we do during the process is actually showing some intent data points from keywords that they might find interesting, like competitors or keywords related to their products. And that's more of an education process where we're saying, hey, look how many, look how much volume these keywords are getting for accounts that are interested in your products or services. And that would tie into like an overall goal, right? Hey, we want to increase pipeline. Well, hey, did you know all these accounts are actually interested in your products or services? Have you guys actually reached out to them yet?
No, I absolutely love that. And for everyone that's tuning in, if you're using data, let us know in the chat. And I want to pivot here and speak to Olivier because you're probably getting sold to, and then also you're training your teams on how to prep before discovery calls. So would love for you to walk us through that, especially as the economy is different. There's different things that are going on. How are you preparing your teams? And then when you're getting sold to, what do you like to see? And also tell us some things that you don't like to see. So people don't do that.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing, with 20 plus years experience, there's a couple of things, which comes as a basic now when it comes to sales. The first thing, obviously, you need to invest time in researching, who you're going to be speaking to, who you're going to be selling to. And I guess specifically in the current market conditions when you see, the patient breakout of Silicon Valley Bank, going bankrupt in a day, and then the challenges of some people like paying their payroll in the next day, and then, VC funding. So everything which is pretty much macro and then microeconomic could be impacting a specific business. You need to be on top of this. So anything that is happening to business, I think thanks today to social network, thanks to Google, it's so easy for you to research and have some compelling events and then compelling discussions, with your potential prospects and customers. So I guess the first thing that I want everybody to do is, first of all, to know, what's the purpose of, the call, and pretty much what's the company being going through, potentially find out, and then cover some potential, I would say, hobbies, or potential, I would say, personal agenda, for the potential buyer you're going to be speaking to. So all of this is like, the back to basics, and that's what I train. I've been training all my life. This is what I ask my first line, my second line leaders to do with every single interaction. At the end of the day, let's not forget, ever since we've transitioned from COVID to post-COVID, digital engagement now becomes king. You have no issue now into engaging to almost anybody. Back, prior to COVID, having, let's say, a conversation with the C-level in the bank was almost impossible. You would have had to do like a real physical meeting to do so. Nowadays, you can do it. People accept. You can open up, you can have a Google Meet, you can have a Zoom, you can use any kind of technology to connect, simply because things have changed. So therefore, you need to be compelling. You need to be precise. And then you need to use digital sales engagement tools in order to really drive the discussion and making sure that every single, I would say, interaction that you have is simply meaningful with your prospecting customer. So that's what I train my people to do: be meaningful. And then last but not least, think big. We're in that current economy, people will believe that, things are complex. The reality is, in that specific context, this is where you actually uncover the biggest opportunities. So don't be scared to dare. Don't be scared to think big.
So that's, I think, an interesting perspective we could go down, and then we'll pivot to Sarah here. And for those of you who are in the audience, if you're thinking big, let us know. How do you push the team to do that? Is it a written exercise? Is it something that you do on a weekly team basis where you're saying, hey, like, what are your big goals, and you're pushing people? For sales leaders that are in the audience that are looking for their team to do that, what are some suggestions you have for them?
So I guess storytelling is probably, your biggest thing. So if you want to train, or if you want to influence change, well, you need to show it, right? People somehow wants to feel it. So I guess whether it's a meaningful conversation with a prospect, or it's a conversation with one of your AE, regardless, from Japan to Mexico, which I lead, you need to have that meaningful conversation. You need to tell that story. And if you tell the story about, how you have engaged, how you've been successful, how you have transformed, and how pretty much the buyer, the CXO, have asked you for more transformation, more value, and then that drove that 6 or 7-digit type of deals, that's what the people want to replicate, and that's how you push them to do it. Now, you can't force them, but you can influence them. And if you influence them the right way with the right story, then they just want to be like you. They want to be a winner, and that's how you drive actually winning teams and winning deals.
I love that. No, that's great. And that actually transitions right into Sarah. We were talking a lot on our prep call around how you're using this tool called Remarkable, which is crazy. And you're painting the vision for potential clients when you're selling Gong, and you're breaking down certain things that I had never seen before. So can you tell about how you're doing storytelling, how you set up your storytelling and prepping before your calls to make sure you're painting that picture for potential clients?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the ways that we at Gong are trying to approach our customers and our market is through doing education, like Vin is, where he's trying to teach his customers something new. The stat is something like, the vast majority, 90-something% of C-level executives get on a call and they are hoping to learn something new, not just see a demo or hear your pitch, but they want to be informed about something they might not know about. So if you think, okay, well, what do I know that my customers might not know? So you kind of start there, and that sort of starts to formulate some of your story. Usually when I talk to people about Gong, they have a narrow understanding of what it is we do. I think this is call coaching or call transcription. And yes, we do both of those things, but we're so much more than that. So I think what's happening for my customers, what's happening for CROs, what's happening in this person's business that I might know about through my research, and what are the areas that I can educate them on that will expand their knowledge both of what we do and what's happening, like for other CROs like them. So that's how I'm like kind of framing it in my brain as I come to the call. And then what we do is we use, I use Remarkable, but you can also create digital whiteboards, but we start to whiteboard out the story of what's going on. So my agenda for my discovery call starts with, I want to learn about you and your business, and I want to understand, based off of X, Y, or Z research I've done, how that might be challenging you, or any other initiatives that might be on the table that I haven't been able to find out about. But then I'd like to spend a little bit of time discussing some industry trends that we're seeing from CROs with our partnerships with Gartner, McKinsey, et cetera. Great. So then I kind of tell this story, and it opens up our discovery beyond, what is Gong, how does Gong function, feature functionality, and it becomes what's happening in the economy, why aren't CROs able to meet their revenue expectations, what is slowing down reps from attaining quota, why is the average quota attainment of a rep at 57% and 53% of deals don't end up closing that are already in commit. And let's try to get to the root causes. So then we're having like this exploratory conversation where we're talking about way bigger picture items, and we are visualizing it with a whiteboard, so I can write down anything that they're saying. I can draw pictures of it, and we actually retain information much better when something is drawn. So if I was like really good, I would have shared my screen and drawn all of this out for you, but I didn't. But so I'm also visualizing it as the conversation goes. And so my customer hopefully will walk away from that discovery call feeling heard, feeling like they were able to share challenges that they're experiencing, but also feeling educated about what is regularly happening for other CROs like themselves, and some of the root causes behind those problems that we've seen coming up. So that's kind of what we're doing. I don't know how well I articulated myself. I think I need to drink more of this coffee.
No, you're all good. I think that's something that's completely different. If you are listening in right now and you're using visuals or whiteboards, put a 1 in the chat. Let us know if you're even incorporating this tactic. I think that's really interesting. When you're also looking as well and doing these different preps, whiteboards, etc., are you doing something similar to what Vin is saying as well, and like coming in with like preset data too, to be like, here's data that I know already? Like, what are some things that are going on there?
Yeah, so I have some preset data. So we've got a couple statistics. One is a McKinsey stat: 70% of strategic initiatives fail. Another is around rep productivity. It's like 77% of a rep's time is spent on non-selling activities. I believe that's from Forrester from about 2 months ago. And the other one is a CSO Insight stat, which is 53% of deals that reps put into commit, which is, they believe 100% of this deal is going in, or they have the most confidence on, end up not closing. And they might get pushed into the next quarter. They might come in for a radically different number. But at the end of the day, the number that they're calling isn't coming in. And so those are 3 big trends that shouldn't be surprising to most revenue leaders. Sometimes the numbers are next to them are surprising, but they've all felt them. And then we start digging into the root causes. Now, those are like numbers that I can use on pretty much any call to sort of set the tone. But then the additional work that I need to do, and we're very fortunate to have a fantastic enablement team and enablement resources at Gong. But there's a guy named Danny Wasserman, and he has gone through and basically gone into every industry and pulled out industry trends that are coming up from places like Fortner, Gartner, or not Fortner, Forrester and Gartner and McKinsey. And he's pulling up all of these different industry trends. And like, we've got a whole big doc full of it. So I can kind of go in and pull some resources to really get myself acquainted with the world of my customer. And we can start having a conversation about these at scale trends. The other thing is, if I'm selling to publicly traded companies, which I kind of do a mix of both, privately held and publicly, since I sit in this mid-market spectrum that goes from very smaller businesses to medium-sized businesses. But if you use a tool like Seeking Alpha, you can go in and read quarterly earnings reports. I love reading investor relations or like an investor is reviewing what's happening and giving their opinion on what's happening in the business and whether or not you should be bullish or not on this company. But then I kind of come in with this informed opinion about what problems they might be experiencing and how that's showing up in the day-to-day of a revenue leader. If, say, you're launching a new product and your CEO says 25% of our revenue should be coming from this new product release. Okay, well, that means a bunch of things for someone who's sitting in a CRO position or a VP of sales position. And there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. And there's a lot of movement they need to make happen on the front lines that they don't typically have visibility into. And so I can start connecting those dots and say, hey, I have this hypothesis. Am I totally off base? And then they'll either say, yes, you have no idea what you're talking about. Here's what's really going on. And people love to correct you, which is great. I don't mind being wrong. Tell me what's really going on. Yeah, that's what we're here to do. Or they say, yeah, yes, and then they build off of it. Or they say, yeah, totally right. And then we can start talking about, okay, like, how are you going to solve for that today? What are you doing so far? How does this impact the business? If 25% is the number, like how big of an issue is this for you right now? Is there something else on your plate that takes precedent? Can you stack rank that for me? But that's how you start getting the stuff from discovery that really helps you form a strong business case. And obviously I'm talking about like ideal scenarios. Sometimes this is like multiple conversations that you're teasing this information out. But every once in a while, someone will just be like, yeah, I'm an open book. Let me tell you everything.
and I mean, it's like we want as much information as we can across the board. And that's the key. And Kelsey said, what's the whiteboard? It's remarkable. So that's what you want to check out there. Shout out to some people here already coming in with some good nuggets here. Great insight, Tyler. We appreciate that. I like this comment here. I want to highlight it. We have the what we heard slide on screen and edit as we go. I think that's an excellent way to be running that as well. And those are some good stuff there. Shout out to Eddie. What's going on, man? Hopefully you're doing good. Just started using Aligned, and I hope it's going well for you as well. And that's where we're going to have a real quick pause here, because for everyone listening in, we just we literally have said a whole lot of stuff, right? And we want to make sure, right, that everyone is getting benefit here. So if you're finding this helpful or impactful, make sure to drop it in the chat and say, hey, this has been helpful. This is impactful so far. We want to be able to hear, right, where everyone's at right now and those different things. And then someone came in here and said, can you share those 3 macro trends again, please?
Yeah, the 3 macro trends are 70% of strategic initiatives fail. That's McKinsey. And essentially, strategic initiatives are your big bets for the beginning of the year, or whatever time of year you're in. So this could be new messaging. For example, at Gong, we rolled out new messaging at our SKO, and we want to make sure that all of our reps are doing it, and that adoption is happening. And we've found using Gong data that if you do use our new strategic messaging, you increase your win rates. There's a higher likelihood that the deal will convert. So getting everyone on the same page and using that messaging, I say it's singing the same song in the same key at the same time. So that could be a strategic initiative, could be new pricing, could be that you're going into a new vertical or industry, but those big bets, 70% of the time they fail. That doesn't mean that every single initiative fails. That could mean that part of like the 3 big initiatives you're coming to market with end up failing. So, 2 out of the 3, for example. So that's one of the strategic, one of the industry trends. The second one comes from Forrester. 77% of sellers' time is spent on non-selling activities. So this is updating your CRM. This is, building a deck. This is, feeling your feeling. This is clicking around on LinkedIn or doing some research. But only 23% of your time is spent sitting in front of a customer, having a conversation, doing what we are paid lots and lots of money to do, which is close deals and move deals forward. And then the third industry trend is from CSO, and it is 53% of deals reps commit to closing don't actually come in. And again, that statistic is like, you could, that deal that you're putting into commit, it might close, but it might close 6 months later than you were expecting it to. Or it might close at a completely different number than you were calling initially. And so that usually speaks to revenue leaders for us, because they very much care about their forecast and being accurate. They need to, you don't want to be over and you don't want to be under. You want to be right about there, within a 5% margin. Or, I mean, Olivier can tell me if I'm right on that piece, but that's my understanding from talking to people like him on a regular basis.
And let's dive into some other things that we saw earlier. A couple of people said, here's some things that are on their mind or even challenges. And I want to dive into that. Just as we were talking about this earlier, I think this actually is a really good question here, which is losing to indecision. So we think about questions, right? Questions we need to ask that don't lead to us losing to indecision. So I want to be able to answer this. And so let's go back to you, Vin. We're giving you the spotlight here. Losing the indecision. What are some things that you're doing to make sure that does not happen? What questions are you asking? How are you phrasing this to ultimately close the deal and figure out, okay, like, how do I get them out of the status quo?
Yeah, and there's definitely some good stats maybe Sarah knows around how many deals actually like lose to indecision. I think it starts in the beginning phases during discovery. So one of the big goals for me personally this year is to get better at discovery and trying to identify like a reason why we're actually speaking. So one of the things that can help you earlier on if you ask is you're having this conversation, you have a disco call set up, you can ask something like, what's going on in the business that's driving X, Y, and Z to be a priority today. All right, they'll talk through that. And then, you can be a little playful and you say, guessing you didn't just wake up one day and say you need a new ABM solution or whatever it is. When did you realize this was an issue? Right? They'll start to kind of open up a little bit and then you kind of go down and you'd be like, what metrics are suffering the most? And so this is creating what you're doing right now is like creating this like cost of inaction where you're saying, hey, you mentioned you're struggling with this. You need this because X, Y, and Z. And by the way, this is also some things that are happening negatively to the business if we don't accomplish this. So now you're creating this kind of like cost of inaction, which should create some urgency around moving the deal forward.
Awesome. And when you're looking at different things across the board and looking at different questions that you could be asking of a cost of action, have there been like really good questions that have worked? I know things are also like, you got to look at them in different ways, but are there things like, wow, this question is really good for me?
That's a tough one. I think one thing I like to ask too is like, well, what's your backup plan if like you can't get something like this in place? Like, how are you planning on solving this without, doing something like investing into an ABM solution? Like, how are you looking to solve that? And typically maybe they'll give you an answer, and that answer actually they may realize might not actually get the problem solved they need to, which kind of reinforces your value prop. So I think just like setting them up a little bit just to better understand, like, okay, if you're not going to invest in something like this, like what's your backup plan? Like, how are you planning on solving this? You tried X, Y, and Z earlier, you mentioned, so that's not an option. Like what's plan B?
Yeah. And I want to come back to here, right back to Olivier here. So when you're looking at your team, what are things that you're doing to make sure that you're getting ahead of the status quo, not losing to indecision? How are you prepping your team accordingly?
One of my good friends, I'm sure many of you have been using the Sandler methodology. I guess there's like some basics, right, to sales. And I guess the first thing, which I think is probably one of the most important thing at the moment in this current like market trends or market conditions, is to understand what's the compelling event. Why you want to do something. And do you have the budget? Do you have do you have really sort of purchasing process, which is in place to make it happen? So it's super important at this moment to maintain, first of all, a good understanding of the why, and the second, to maintain a level of emergency always, while at the same time understanding if what you're looking to do is actually being driven by the right stakeholders with whom you're actually discussing. Because sometimes one of the biggest experience that we can learn from is you're sometimes selling to the wrong guy. And therefore, when you're speaking about, leading to indecision, it's not that there's no decision. You're simply speaking to the wrong person in the organization that is not making the right choice, or simply is not enabled, to make the decision. And therefore, if you're speaking to the wrong person, all of a sudden, that's not going to lead to anywhere. So I always like sort of challenge my people to understand really is, are you talking to the right people? Is it an influencer? Is it a champion? Is it a decision maker? So really back to basic. And do you have a compelling event? And if that is the compelling event and you need to roll out, let's say, 1st of July, 1st of September, 1st of Jan, what is the sequence of events that we're going to do, right, in order to reach actually this goal? So as long as you maintain all of this, obviously not to pressure too much, but at least, always have this upfront contract conversation with the stakeholders or the people you're talking to, then you sort of maintain the right timeline, to make a decision. It doesn't mean the decision will be made, but at least you're setting the foundations for that decisions to be made. And that's what you can actually influence.
So I want to double click on this because I know probably a lot of people in here, you'll probably agree with this in the chat, is champion is sometimes one of the words that we in sales is like, hey, we got the champion. And then sometimes you don't have the champion at all. It's like, that's actually not happening. So talk to us on how are you getting your reps? What have you seen to be successful to get people to find their champion? Are you saying, hey, these are certain questions that we're asking? In the way that I sell, I always like to try to find out, can I get the WhatsApp or the text, right? Because then I can start communicating there, and at least I know I have some buy-in that they believe that I actually can help them. But what are you doing in telling your team to set these things up?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's actually a secret sauce for that, to be quite honest with you. I think a champions can actually happen. It can pop up almost at any time. You could actually identify a champion by going, let's say, to a conference, to an event, to a dinner, or you just go out, by the supermarket, like we're shopping. So you could actually technically meet a champion anywhere. Because as you know, the champion is actually someone that wants to drive a change and that has an interest to drive the change. But they may not be the one making the decision, but the one connecting you to the right people within the organization to make it. So again, speaking about the champion or the one that will influence the decision, it's a tricky one. I don't think there's like actually a right set of questions for that. But I think it's about the number of engagement. It's about, the agenda of the person. It's about the knowledge of the organization. Is the willingness as well, to open up. Because what happens sometimes, and I'm sure many of you have been facing this, right? Whether it's Gong, whether it's Demandbase, whether it's Deel. Sometimes you're speaking to someone that is willing to do everything, but at the same time will never connect you with anybody. So is that a champion? Well, that's a good question. The guy wants to give you all of the knowledge. He's going to tell you about the company, the transformation, and how important would that be, for your company, to partner with him. But at the same time, it's never going to connect you to anybody. Is it because he's not empowered? Is it because he doesn't want to lose the ground? He doesn't want to lose the power because he just want to spend some time with you? That's a different story. But we all have been through this, right? So I guess again, I think the advice is it's not like a one man, a one stakeholder interaction. It's actually a multiple stakeholder interactions. And the more people you talk to within the organization, the more chances you have actually to close a deal. And I think it should not be a problem, by the way, to say to someone, and in the same way you actually do your discovery, when you ask your questions about, what can be meaningful or how is this, is going to add value to your company, or what's the compelling event. If someone doesn't know how to answer, the right answer is to say, you know what, that is great. Would you be, in any case, be able to connect me to that person, that could maybe help us, and then you include that person in the process of, building together, to lead at some point, to make a progress or transformation within the company. And that has been in the past very, very successful. But once again, I don't think there's like a real secret sauce. You just need to spend time. You just need to be alert. And if you feel you're speaking to the wrong person, keep on speaking with them, but at the same time developing other channels within the company. And once you feel more secure, then you just shift. This is what I recommend my people to do. So you can't place all of your bets for sure into one man or one woman.
No, you should never do that. I like to call it deal insurance. We have insurance for a house, we have insurance for a car, but you need to make sure you have some deal insurance, because that one person at any point in time can be like, I'm out. And in this economy, that can happen quicker than most, right? And I also agree with you as well on trying to find ways to have conversations with the champion to figure out if it's right fit or not a right fit. And there is no silver bullet. So I know someone probably came and said, oh, I'm going to the silver bullets. Like, that's typically never going to happen, but you can find ways in order to identify that. So we're going to actually go deeper into this question, because a couple people are talking about, how do you know if they're a good champion? Would love to hear this from Sarah and Vin, and diving on this and your perspectives as you're selling. Also as well, we're going to drop in real quick a link to Align if you want to go check that out. We'll have someone drop that in there for you, because it's directly like tied into what we're talking about. Like you can get people in rooms and things of that nature to make sure your champion's actually checking out what you're doing. So we're going to drop that in the chat if you want to go check it out. That actually helps answer this question. It's actually very timely. But let's go over to Sarah. How do you know if they are a good champion?
I think the difference between a champion and a tire kicker is somebody who is willing to take you to power. So often what you do when you're talking to someone, especially early stage, is you ask a question like, hey, the last time you bought software or whatever it is you're selling, services, a physical product, what was the process in order to make that purchase? Most of the time they'll have bought something in the past and they'll tell you, or they'll say, I'm not sure, but I think it looks like this, but they'll give you some semblance of what it looks like. Almost every organization, I think they're like, unless you're talking to the CEO of a 5-person company, almost every organization has to have multiple stakeholders say yes. And they will lay out that process for you as best they can. You are going to ask something around the lines of, hey, now that you've seen our product or at this stage in the process, do you feel comfortable getting other people involved? And they'll either say yes or no. But if they keep saying no, so yeah, if they say no, you say why, and it could be that there's some kind of hiccups with the product, or they're not convinced about your security or whatever. Then you work with them until they feel confident. But if they can't give you a real solid good reason why they're saying no, and they won't help you multi-thread, but they're telling you everything, and they tell you they believe, and they tell you they see product value, then they're a tire kicker and they're not a champion. And so you should take that information and use it and cold call all the people that you need to get involved. You should, if you feel like you're going to burn a bridge, you should get your SDR or find an SDR and sick them on other people. You can even compose the emails for them, right. And then you can be like, oh, sorry, my SDR did it. But you should find, you should find ways to, you should go to your executives at your company and try to get executive alignment and have them reach out. But there's a bunch of different ways you can get multi-threaded, because I think like in enterprise accounts, there's like at least a minimum of 8 people need to be involved in making a decision. And every time you talk to someone new, you ask them questions around, based off of what you've seen today on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, man, I wish I bought this product last year. And 1, that was a massive waste of time, Sarah. Where are you falling? And, hopefully they give you something above a 5. And if they don't, you ask them why, and then you figure it out. Or you say, hey, but you can sit down in your pipeline review with your manager and say, hey, listen, I've got these 9 people involved in the deal. I think Carl's a red light. He's a stop. We got to get him to a yellow. I think Jessica's a green. She's like really helping me out. She's sending me screenshots of Slack messages with IT. I think that she's a champion. And you want to keep your greens, and you want to turn your yellows, those people who are like, kind of on the fence, you want to turn them as green as possible, and you want to get rid of the many red lights. But the idea is that you want to have more greens and yellows than you do reds, because if you can get the majority of people to say, yes, we want this, then you are far more likely to win the deal. And so like a lot of times people are like, well, how do you know? How do you know? The answer is you just ask. Like in sales, you just ask. That's all we're paid to do. We're paid to ask questions that make other people uncomfortable. Like, would you buy this? You can phrase it as many different ways as you want, but at the end of the day, you should just be asking, like, hey, like, if money off the table, say we come to an agreement around, our terms and conditions and a number that feels comfortable for everyone. Is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward with us today? And it's the end of my quarter, so I'm kind of asking like everybody that question right now. But just ask, and they'll either tell you yes or no. And then if they say no, you say why. And you keep asking too. You keep asking, well, what's your purchasing process? What's your purchasing process? Okay, great. You're green. Like, how do we get this deal done? Because I just closed the deal a couple weeks ago, and I had to ask that question like 5 times, and nobody, like, I got a different answer all 5 times. And it wasn't until like round 6 that I actually figured out what their purchasing process was. And it was nothing like the 5 other answers they gave me. So the other thing is just like, keep asking. Even though you've heard the answer once, you should ask it again and again and again. There's a jet flying overhead, so I'm going to hit mute and let somebody else talk.
Well, let's get Vin in here, and also as well want to give some shout outs here as we get Vin. He's gonna have his answer. David said facts, so yeah, Sarah keeping it simple and straight up. Zach, love your comment here. Let's highlight this and talk a little bit more about it. I love the test the champion. Will they be open to a texting relationship? Can they deliver my proposal succinctly? That's a good one. Do they have power to walk in the signer's office? Right. I think that's all great stuff. And for everyone that's listening in right now across all the streams that we have going on, how do you address the champion? How do you identify that you do have a champion? It's not just us just answering this. We want to hear from you as well. So add that in the chat. But now we have spotlighted here, Vin. So go into like, how are you making sure that like, okay, is this even a good champion, or are you playing yourself?
Well, what Sarah and Oliver mentioned, I completely agree with. I also love what my boy Zach said, test the champion. And so, yeah, you do this by asking for different things, whether it's an introduction to someone on their team, whether you're doing a demo to a new department, getting more multi-channeled. You guys talked a lot about texting, which I definitely try to do as well. I've been more so leaning towards doing the Slack connects, if anyone has used that before, which I'm sure a lot of you have. It's not anything new. They just seem a bit more convenient, and I've been getting a lot more conversions, aka like people agreeing to connect over Slack Connect, because I think it's a little less personal than giving someone your cell phone number. So I've been having many Slack connects with people, and basically I phrased it just like, hey, like, would you mind like if I just sent you a Slack connection? That way, if you have any like quick questions, I can just like shoot them over to you during the workday. And I mentioned like during the workday, so they know I'm not going to like berate them after hours. And I've gotten like a lot of success with it. I actually had, from one deal that I was working in Q1, I had multiple different Slack connects with like 4 different people from one account. I don't know if they even knew, but I treated it like, they were individual champions. And that's the goal. I think maybe it was Sarah had mentioned it, or maybe Oliver, I'm not too sure, but he talked about getting multiple champions. And so that's a really important part of the process as well. I actually use Gong to achieve that. So what I do is when I have a demo that has like 10 different people on it, the one person helped you set it up, they're your champion, but then, he or she may have invited like, 10 other people to the call. After the call, I try to send everyone a individualized message. And if I did my job good enough, then I would get them to talk on the call. Even if it was just one sentence, whatever it was, I would literally go into Gong, grab the transcript, take the quote, throw it into an email. Hey, James, you asked about X, Y, and Z. I just want to make sure I answered your question. Here are some ways we can help solve for it. Would it make sense to dive into like a 15-minute call just to go a little bit deeper into the topic of interest you had? And then now I have a separate thread with them. And then I'll go down the route of trying to get those Slack connects. And the more Slack connects I can collect, like Pokemon cards, like the more I can get, like the better the deal is. So that's kind of my strategy.
I love that. So your Slack must be bumping then.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome.
I do. I know. I
was gonna throw one thing in. When you have those multiple stakeholder meetings, my buddy John Coons, who is one of the enterprise sellers at Gong, he is on like our customer sales team, but he shared with me a really solid technique, which is before that call even takes place, single thread all of them and be like, hey, Morgan, we're going to meet in a week. I'm really excited to connect with you. I know there's a lot of people on this call. Would you have 10 minutes for a get to know you chat? And just send that email to everybody. Most people will say yes, but I've done that for my really big meetings, and I've been able to get all of these little tidbits about what they're specifically focused on, what they care about. And I can kind of synthesize that information and understand based off of everything, my champions told me, plus these 8 other people, what are the big thematic things I should focus on? And I can say, hey, this is what I've heard. I can do that what I've heard slide like other people are sharing, but I do that too. This is what I've heard. There are a couple things that like have come up. We won't be able to address today, but I'm happy to cover them in another conversation. And then you can have all of these different demo calls or discovery calls after your big presentation, but you've been able to say, I heard you, I see you, and I'm addressing the big themes that are coming up for today's conversation. We'll schedule more time to do A, B, C, D. And that's really, really helpful.
Sarah, did you just say most people say yes?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it depends on who you're selling to.
I was like, you don't hear that in sales though. Most of the time you hear no, right?
But I sell to salespeople. But also if someone's already accepted a calendar invite and and like they know that this meeting's coming up, yeah, they're probably going to want to be like, wait, what did I just say yes to? What do I care about?
Yeah. Right. And that also, like, to your point, that also like tells you the health of the deal too. Like you talk about testing, testing the deal. Like the more yeses, to your point, you can get, like, okay, yeah, this is a really great deal. If everyone just leaves you on red, you're like, I don't know about this one.
100%.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want that. You don't want that. So we're right now 45 minutes and we have 15 minutes left. So if you have any questions, now is the time to put them in the chat. I do see a question that did come in, so we're gonna tackle that and see who wants to address that real quick. If you are enjoying those so far, let us know in the chat. Put a 2 with this information that we're dropping here. But we have 15 minutes left, so if you do have a question, this is the time. But we're gonna go ahead and answer some ones that I see in here as well. So this is a very intriguing question. Don't know who wants to dive into this one, but enterprise software that's based on license fees. How to overcome the let's pilot this objection and increase deal size to 6 figures. Who wants to tackle this one?
Olivier does.
Yeah, I mean,
this is like,
yeah, that's a very good question, by the way. I was very fortunate to work with a leader at Salesforce that was called Keith Block. And Keith Block was one of those great leading Oracle before, joining Salesforce, and had like an amazing path becoming a CEO, and then afterward like a co-CEO of the company. And one of the big thing that Keith was actually saying based on the experience was, don't shoot the bear. Okay. And that comes like exactly what to the question now. Sometimes, right, you're so keen to just close the deal, but the problem is sometimes it's like it could be like a one shot, it could be a pilot, it could be like a one product sale, it could be a 1 or 2 touch, and you just want to close the deal. But sometimes you need to learn that it's not the right time to close the deal. It's actually the right time actually to create demand to close a bigger deal. But now the question is, right, when do you know that you can actually do that? When do you know that, instead of doing like just land and expand or going to like a freemium model, you can just wait and then, turn that thing into like a bigger thing? And I guess here it's now comes experience, and now comes behavior, and now comes difficult. I mean, I think Sarah here is a very good representation of this, but you need at the same time, as you kind of building your multiple stakeholder heat map, and starting like to turn everyone from yellow to green, right? And then starting to understand that what you're going to deliver doesn't have actually a value for a small subset, not from a department, potentially not even from a country, but rather for like a large organization. When you start to sense that, now is the time for you to understand and to test if it is the right time to engage, or is the right time to continue to pilot to make it like a bigger thing. Because that in an enterprise sales cycle, if someone is going to knock the door of a CXO to ask for a budget, he's not going to do it twice, at least not in the short term. So if he goes for something, you need to be able to understand, what is he going to ask for, and what is the value, that he wants to deliver for the company. So if you want to do this for a pilot, you can do it for sure. But then that's going to be one ask, and you may need to wait for another like 3, 6, 9 months, to make like a bigger ask until you prove results. If you know that the stakeholder you're talking to has the ability to potentially ask bigger, think big, then you just wait and you just build it and you just make it happen. Again, there's no secret science behind that. It's obviously about your ability to challenge. It's about the ability as well for a company to be like maybe potentially an early adopter. It's about a company that has done it before as well. You're not gonna try to pilot this on a company that has always been buying a couple of thousands of dollars of software and never made like a 6 or 7 figure deal, right? Let's be honest. So you want to try to understand as well what's been the company behavior. You need to learn, who you're talking to within the heat map. You need to understand how much power the stakeholders are going to bring you. And I think once you get all of this together, then you can make a decision if it's the right time to shoot the bear, in the early stage, or if you should wait like a little bit more. But again, it's about you. It's your predator. You need to be, this is the Kill Bill stuff, right? You need to understand when you shoot, right? And that is something that comes with experience. There's no secret sauce behind that.
I just, he's like, there's no secret sauce. That hopefully as everyone's catching that, because that's what they're wanting for. But it's the due diligence. So let's go back to answering that question there. hopefully that helped answer the question. Let us know in the chat if that did. And we're going to go quick fire to some other ones here as well. So this question is right here from Zach, or actually from Tyler. Tyler had his come in first, so we'll get to you. What is a better way to generate leads? Cold outreach or channel partnerships for referrals? Ooh. So this is, I don't know who wants to take this one. This is an interesting question. Who wants to tackle this one?
I'll say my part real fast, and then anyone else can chime in. Cold outreach is far less likely to close quickly because we've all seen the little thing of like, only 3% of the market is actually actively trying to buy. And then there's, the chunk that's open to considering maybe making a purchase. And then there's like, the really big chunk that's like, we don't want it, leave me alone. And people are far more likely to make purchases that from people they trust, and they don't trust you because you're some rando stranger showing up in their inbox. But if their friend says, oh my God, I just bought Gong and it's totally changed the way I manage my sales team, you really should check it out. That is going to go a way longer way than me being like, hey, this is Sarah Brazier. Do you have 5 minutes for me to tell you why Gong is fantastic? So channel and partnerships, if you can master that motion, which, that can go a long way, but referrals are fantastic. So if you close a deal, you should have a template that you send out that just says, hey, Olivier, this is Sarah. So excited to partner with you. How's it going with your CSM? By the way, the majority of my leads come through referrals. I know you just felt confident partnering with us. Is there anyone in your network you think would benefit from leveraging Gong? And they'll either say yes or no. And if the answer is yes, who? And if the answer is no, that's okay. I'll go ask someone else.
Okay. Anyone else want to tackle that question before we move to the next one?
That question is actually a very good question, right? That was asked. So, if you look at different segments, right? Whether you're selling SMB, whether you're selling mid-market, whether you're selling enterprise, everyone has his own contribution within what we call the horsemen. So your, SDR or your AE cold outreach or your, partners and your alliances, everyone has a contribution. But the reality is exactly what Sarah was saying. If you're an SMB, normally, I would say that you have maybe much more chances for cold outreach to be successful. Why? Because a cold outreach will probably touch on one or two. It's going to be like a 1 or 2 touch sales, right? So you're going to be in that 30 to 45 day sales cycle, where as you grow into more complex, more mid-market, more enterprise, people, because you have multiple stakeholders, they will tend actually to do business with people that they trust. And therefore, this is why when you look at a motion like enterprise, I would say 30 to 50% actually of the leads actually come from your partnership and your alliances team. These are the real leads. These are the ones that come from the trusted partner of the CXOs, which are making decisions, and these are the ones which are actually helping you do business. And sorry, I should integrate within that category customer referrals or actually ex-customer referrals. Because that's the best customer. Those that have actually purchased Gong and moved from one place to the other are your best advocate, and they're the one bringing you the leads. So again, it's not about what are the best. It just depends on what you sell, to who you sell, and everybody has a scope. So cold outreach as well in enterprise does function, right? Because the SDR motion still has a great key piece of helping us generate pipeline, but at the same time, I would say that partnership and alliances leads will turn to close faster and potentially bigger in size than the traditional cold outreach that comes from an unknown with whom you're started to land and expand into a relationship.
I'll just throw in, there's a couple softwares that Gong uses, and I mean, you guys go explore whatever software you want to explore, but one is we use this thing called user gems. It basically says, hey, Sarah, there is somebody who just joined a company in your book of accounts that used to use Gong at a different company. Do you want to reach out to them? And it pings me and lets me know that, which is awesome. And then Morgan talks about this all the time on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow Morgan, obviously you should. But Sales Navigator, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, if someone moves jobs or their title changes, there's a way that it can integrate with your CRM. So again, it's doing something similar like User Gems does for me, where it says, hey, there's all of these people who are from a previous account, are a past user, and they've moved to a new company. And I can just reach out and say, hey, we worked with each other 6 months ago when you bought Gong. Looks like you've moved to new opportunities. Do you think it would be a good fit? And that's a really great way to source leads.
That's SalesNav is the most underrated tool out there across the board. I mean, if you follow me, you already know what that is, and it is a good way to identify those triggers and all the other tools that you want to go check out there. There's a ton that do that. And one thing that is incredibly important, as all of these different things that we talked about, is try A/B testing what is working for you as well, especially when you are doing cold outbound. Like, you need to be doing every single thing that you can. But I also say this as well, is that the referrals is also a way of pipeline generation as well that people just forget. Like, outbound isn't just like, oh, it has to be cold every single time. That's like, you don't have to go hard mode every single time. Like, referrals is a great way to build pipeline, right? And you need to be focusing on that piece as well. So we have 5 minutes left. There's 2 more questions I want to dive into. Thank you so much for saying this is Gold. Glad you're enjoying the information. Real quick, I know a lot of people are going to be like, yo, where's the replay? What are different clips? So we're doing something pretty unique here. And I'm going to share my screen here because this is just something we're going to dive into. So through the product I was just talking about, a line here, what you're going to see is we're going to have this room, and it's just dropped in the chat. So you all can go check it out as well. But within this room, we're going to have the different replays, recording. So we're gonna have the recording in here, and we're also gonna have some event highlights in here as well. And then if you want to go check out the speakers even more on their LinkedIn profiles, you can go do that as well. So we created this unique room for you all as far as the product here, but the whole goal is to not only get the full recording, you're going to get the highlights that came here from today. You can go back in there and access it. All that stuff will be coming soon. That will be dropped in the chat as well, so you can go access it. I'm going to throw up a QR code on the screen as we answer our last questions. So if you do want to go check it out, make sure that you bookmark it. We're going to be diving in and giving you all just mini clips of like actual stuff that you hear today, so you get more gold, Marcella. So there you go. But also as well, you can dive into some maybe moments you missed. Maybe you tuned in late here, and everyone's got busy days, so that's what's going to be happening there. So want to highlight that. It'll be in the chat. I'll put on the QR code. But let's get to these last questions before we get out of here. And these have been some great questions so far, y'all. So this has just been amazing. So let's dive into this next question here, and this could get a little bit deep, but I do like the question. All right. So economic climate. Are you saying the same I am? No matter how much value add, you have to also consolidate spend for the CFO. Are you seeing the CFO get into the conversations they previously didn't? I know that's an astounding yes, but I know as we have like only a couple minutes left here, concisely for whoever wants to answer a quick fire from all three of you, like, how are you tackling this?
I can kind of jump in quick. Yeah.
Or not. Maybe the CFO's beating them up.
The CFOs are definitely jumping in on pretty much all deals at this point now at the end. It's kind of a struggle to identify like how deep you should go. Consolidation is a big play of it. So if your product does do that, it's really important. Demandbase, we can consolidate a lot of people's tech stacks because there's a lot of overlap with some point solutions. So if your product can do that, I think it's very important to point that out. And that's something that I do at Demandbase. But I think it depends on the company and what you're actually selling. I don't know if Sarah or anyone else has anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I think if you know that the CFO is probably going to get involved, the suggestion is to ask about that earlier. So that's something that we've been doing at Gong, where we just say, hey, listen, in this current economic climate, the majority of the time, we've seen that people are getting, their CFO is getting involved earlier. Can you tell me a little bit about what your buying process is like now? And asking questions like that up front to figure out what you need to prepare. And then we've got some really great resources. Some of them are even on Gong's blog, but how do you prepare a business case that someone can easily take to their CFO? A lot of times you can't get FaceTime with the CFO. So schedule time to do a practice run with your champion to prepare them to sell internally for you. Because a lot of times champions actually don't know how to articulate why they should make the purchase as well as you can, because you sell the product every day. This is their first time selling it. So doing all the work to prepare them to have the conversation with the CFO is really, really important. And like, we get our value engineering teams involved so we can really have a like lock rock solid, man, I can't speak today, but a
you're
tight business case, a really solid business case with some numbers that are believable. Because even if you know the numbers are real, you got to make sure that the CFO is going to look at that and say, yeah, I believe that. So those are some things that we're doing.
Yeah, and just to add to what Sarah was saying. So it's true that in current market conditions, you know, at the end of the day, you know, a lot of companies are suffering. And when I say a lot of companies, specifically the one which are like suffering from VC funding, are being like called out to simply like reduce cost. So cost reduction, you know, when it's actually an agenda driven by the CEO and the CFO, could be perceived as super negative when it comes to like new software acquisition. The reality is completely the opposite. If you actually are able to show that, you know, consolidating like a set of software, you know, within one single platform, making it more simple and obviously more agile, while at the same time reducing obviously the cost. So going to that, you know, total TCO, like ownership, TCO comparison between what you have and what you're going to be able to deliver to consolidate, while at the same time to be something that you can, from a risk perspective, you know, deploy in a safe way for the company and in a timely manner, then you're going to have a big advocate within the company. Now, not everyone can do this, right? It does require some support. So some call it obviously value engineering. At Salesforce, we had some other departments doing it, but for sure, you know, knowing how much you spend, what is the value, you know, what is the burden, going into, you know, simplification. I think that's the key word today. Will obviously drive cost reduction if you're able to consolidate. So therefore, it's an opportunity at the moment. It's not actually a threat, but it's a big threat for those that actually have not delivered value over time, for those that actually not delivered adoption, for those which are not measuring nor value nor adoption. For those, they are at risk. But that's the legacy ones, not the new incumbents like looking to disrupt the status quo.
I mean, these are some incredible questions right at time. And I want to respect everyone's time that is on the panel and also everyone listening in. So look, in the top left, if you want the replay, you want the snippets, go ahead and use that QR code. We made it super simple for everybody so you can go access it. So go do that real quick. Also, as well, shout out to Zach. We appreciate you. I haven't seen a sales webinar done this well. So great job on the speakers. So appreciate y'all just dropping gems left and right. And as we leave, the quick fire, right? And then we'll get out of here. What is the one bit of advice, a gem you want to drop for people in the audience that are listening in before we get out of here and go back to selling?
Do your research and come prepared. And that is throughout the entire sales process. Just thinking about what we were just talking about, selling to the CFO. If you've done your research up front, if you've run your discovery, you should have a really solid reason for why they need to invest in your solution. So if you continue to ask questions, if you don't know, ask. Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to sound stupid, because it's far better to know and know where you stand than to, you know, be hoping that you will hit your quota this quarter. So ask the questions and do your research and confirm.
I'll just say, like, sales is obviously peaks and valleys. So even when you're in maybe a rough point or the economy's bad, like, that's even more of an importance to double down on your processes and potentially even trying out new things that could help you secure a deal.
Yeah, I would say tell the story. Always tell the story. Always tell the story of, you know, peers, one which are being successful, which the ones which are like doing transformation. And then as Sarah was saying, you have to be laser focused, and you have to be prepared, and you have to be prepared for every single conversation you have, because you have to be professional, and you need to maintain the level of emergency for that company to buy. Always, you need to find those ways to always, you know, find the way to maintain the level of emergencies. So that is for me like the best advice.
Y'all, I mean, we gotta go. I mean, I could keep going, but I know they got other things to do. But we can't keep hanging out. For every single person that asked the question, reach out to every single person here. You can go find them on LinkedIn. They're probably more than happy to answer your questions there. So again, if it was missed here today, we have to move on due to time. But if y'all want it again, you can always let us know in the chat. But again, what we're going to do is we're going to answer those questions, so send them in there. And then for everyone that's showing love in here, shout out to Jami. Hopefully I'm saying your name right there as well. This was an amazing sales chat. Love your views on these topics. Amazing across the board. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day, a great weekend. And we hope to see y'all next time. Y'all have a good one.
See you, everybody.
See ya.